back to Amateurs Podcast, episode 14. I'm Logan,
I'm Rhett.
and we are continuing our conference preview tier list series. This will be the third installment, and we're going to go with the Big East, a member of the Power Five now.
As some people are calling it, the Big Least.
Big Least, is that what they're saying? Because it's a little sorry.
It is.
And we're going to continue with our tier list system. So we have 5 tiers. Tier 1, Natty Contender. Tier 2, Locks. Tier 3, Bubble. Tier 4, could surprise. It could be competitive. Tier 5, sorry. And after our last SEC review, I will say, to preface, this is a big step down.
Yes. This, like I said during our ACC preview, we still have the Big Ten to factor in. And maybe just based on quantity, they're ahead. But the Big East could be the worst of the Power Five.
Yeah, and despite having the last 2 national champs, it's not looking great. And as always, we'll go in alphabetical order.
Yep.
Start our tier list. So are you ready?
I am.
So first up, we have B for Butler.
Yep.
Where do you have Butler?
Tier 4.
I, too, have them in Tier 4.
Yeah. My lone member.
Lone member in Tier 4.
Yeah.
Okay. They have some losses. They lose DJ Davis, Posh Alexander, but they're bringing in Colby King from Tulane, South Florida kid.
Yep.
Patrick McCaffrey from Iowa. He's leaving his dad. Jamie Kaiser, who was a pretty high recruit, went to Maryland, transferring to Butler. I think their star will probably be Pierre Brooks, who's returning. But nothing else about this team really stands out to me.
No, they're probably going to start Screen, who's large but played very few minutes at the center. McCaffrey, I've seen him not starting, which is a shock to me. He's 6'9", very experienced player.
Very experienced.
A stretch four-ish type of guy. Jamal Telfort, who had a good year, 14-5. Brooks is probably your 2. And then Colby King is the 1, and that brings up a problem. I'm fan of Colby King. Obviously we have seen him up close. They don't have a true point guard.
Yeah, I mean, I would say King's more of a scoring guard for sure. Probably a 2, but he has the size of a 1. I mean, it just, for me, it's like, it's lackluster. There's nothing that really jumps off the page to me.
And frankly, they were very weak at the 5.
Yeah, I think they're pretty weak at every position.
Yeah, well, I think Brooks, Telfort.
They're solid players, but
yeah, it's not a hopeful year for Butler.
But we agree on that. So moving on to C for Creighton. Where do you have Creighton?
Is this an alphabetical test again?
This is an order.
Where would you put Connecticut?
In the U.
Okay, so we're gonna go UConn for that. All right. That threw me. Creighton, full disclosure, is Tier 1A.
I'm gonna have to put them in 1 then. We don't got a Tier 1A.
Where do you have them?
I'm Tier 2.
Okay. I think we all agree they're a lock for the tournament.
Yeah, they're probably a high seed.
Yeah, and I've seen them as low as 4, I think, in one preview, which is a shock. I don't think they'll be any worse than 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with them is they lose considerable amount of production with Baylor Scheierman and Trey Alexander.
Yes, but
they are bringing in, however, Pop Isaacs, Jemiah Neal from Arizona State, Jackson McAndrews, a pretty high recruit, Larry Johnson.
Yeah.
They bring back Stephen Ashworth, Ryan Kalkbrenner. They're going to be solid for sure. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were probably last year.
No, I think they maybe take a step back. Kalkbrenner is
he's the star for them.
He's an All-American kid, I think.
100%.
And I think Ashworth will shoot better. He shot better at his previous stop. Didn't shoot so well here. Pop Isaacs is not a shooter. He's a winning player, which is good. And probably at the 4, they're going to start Mike Miller's
kid. Hopefully he can shoot.
Yeah.
Makes pops.
Hasn't really had an extended look at that. But they have pieces. I mean, Isaacs and Kalkbrenner are very, good player. And Ashworth is a solid player, as is Neal. So yeah, as long as they stay healthy, I mean, you lose Kalkbrenner, then this is a bad season.
Yeah, but as long I think they're going to be top two probably in the Big East. Moving on to DePaul, complete change of scenery.
Yes, and coach.
Well, I'm talking about change of scenery where we go from tier 2 to tier 5.
Yes.
But Chris Holtmann,
made a mistake.
Going to DePaul, an impossible job. I put in my notes, star, who knows? Newcomers, the whole squad. Losses, the whole squad.
Yeah.
Completely new team. However, and to his credit, he brought in a lot of experienced players. However, none of them really are standout players.
No.
I do think they will be better than they were last year. They'll win.
That won't be hard.
Yeah, they just got to win like 2 games.
Yeah. My notes say weak everywhere.
Yeah, there's no real players of note for me.
Yeah, they're gonna probably start Skogman from Davidson. He was a 13-5 kid there. JJ Trainer from Louisville. Yeah. Memorable.
If Layden Blocker, he was pretty highly recruited out of high school, year removed from that ranking.
Yeah, I didn't like him in high school. I was surprised to see how highly he was rated, but okay. Rivera from Illinois Chicago averaged 15, but it's a step up.
I'm saying, all these guys kind of were productive at their last stops, but all of them are pretty big step ups in competition.
The kid Meyer from Coastal was 16-6. He's probably your best player, although he's again making a step up. They're
statistics wise,
tier 5.
100%.
And if they finish anywhere above 11th, it'll be a good season.
Yeah. And a change for Georgetown basketball. I mean, DePaul basketball, which leads me to Georgetown basketball. Yeah. For me, I got Georgetown tier 4.
Wow.
You have them higher? Lower?
Tier 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
But actually, I will say, I like this roster a lot more than the roster last year. I think their backcourt is pretty good with Malik Mack and Jaden Epps. I think that's a solid backcourt.
Okay.
Now, the issue is the rest of the positions. Micah Peavy is a good player.
Solid. He's a solid player.
They bring in Jordan Burks from Kentucky. If he can... Yeah. I mean, he's on the bench at Kentucky, but from Kentucky.
Yeah.
They do lose Dontrez Styles and Supreme Cook, probably the best name in college basketball. So that probably hurts their branding, jersey sales.
Yeah. I mean, you have to give Ed Cooley some credit. He's been a winner at Providence.
Took a very hard job.
He took a very hard job. Hopefully he can transcend the talent. Their center position, they either start Sorber, who's a top 60 freshman, or a reclassed kid from New Zealand, Halawa.
Well, they also have
Fanua.
Drew Fielder. He's got some size on him.
Yeah, size isn't the problem. They had 7 freshmen, and other than Sorber, we're not mentioning many of those guys.
Yeah.
Mac is
Mac's a baller.
He's a baller, but again, it's a step from Harvard to Georgia.
But as a freshman, he did that as a freshman.
No, very very good season.
Jaden Epps is a baller too.
And Epps is really the star.
Yeah, he's the bright spot on this team.
Yeah, so they have a decent backcourt, but just holes everywhere.
I agree with you. Slightly. I'm tier 4, tier 5. Next up, we have Marquette. Now, I got some issues with Marquette. I got them tier 2.
As do I.
But I got issues.
Yep.
The main issue is they don't bring in anybody. And they lose Kolek and also Iguodala.
Yep.
Cam Jones is their star. He's a really good player.
Yep.
But the thing is, you can't just lose an All-American point guard and all Big East forward and not replace them with anybody.
Yeah, I was really surprised when analyzing their offseason. They really didn't add anybody of note. They had one recruit, wasn't overwhelming. You're starting Gold, who's got size at the
Yeah,
center
he's a big kid.
position, and he's played a little last year, but not enough to really, you know,
I mean, they have
move
nice
the needle.
pieces with David Joplin,
Joplin's a
Stevie
good player.
Mitchell.
Yeah.
I really like Sean Jones. He was injured last year, but I mean, it's just
Yeah, they have very little depth, and if you look at their positions, they're very weak at the 1 and the 5. Even though we both like Jones to an extent,
mhm.
this is not a Marquette team.
No, but I do think they're gonna make the tournament. First of all,
Shaka Smart.
Shaka Smart, give him his credit, and how weak the Big East this year is. And they win a good amount of games. They should be in.
Yeah.
However, we saw last year with the committee putting in 3 Big East teams.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised again that I put them in tier 2. Those 4 guys, those 3, the 2, 3, 4 guys have to carry this team.
Yeah. Moving on to Providence. Where do you have Providence?
I have Providence in tier 2. I've
Okay.
seen them higher.
I got them in tier 3, but I can get behind the tier 2.
Okay.
They just have to replace big stuff with Devin Carter and Josh Aduro.
They do, but they bring in some very intriguing players.
They do.
They still have Bryce Hopkins, who was
From injury.
very good player, 16 and 9. They bring in probably the star, Wesley Cardette.
Shout out Team Breakdown, South Florida kid.
Yeah, he was at Chicago State last year, 6'6" kid. He was 19 and 5. Yes, it's a slight step up, but he could very well be a draft prospect.
100%.
They returned Pierre, and they added
2 really nice players.
Bensley Joseph, who, while he is not a superstar, he led the team in Miami. He was a defensive stopper at times. He can run a team.
Yeah, he's got some aspects that you like about him. And he also had a Jabri Abdur-Rahim from Georgia.
Yes, but they also signed 2 other centers. A kid, Oswin, who's 6'9". He's a top 35 kid. And then they got a reclass. I cannot pronounce this kid's name. It begins with an E. Erhun Wonse.
All right, you don't got to do it.
The spelling is, we're going to throw it up. So hopefully it's big kid, well respected. Yeah, I think they have pieces, and if Cardette plays as well as he played at Chicago State, they could be good.
Yeah, I mean, they could move into the tier 2 for me. Just at the moment, they're tier 3 with the loss in production. Moving on, Seton Hall.
Yeah, they're
No, yeah, it's looking a down season.
Yeah.
I put them in tier 4 out of respect for Shane Holloway.
Wow. Okay. I have them tier 5.
Yeah, I mean they don't have a star. They lose Kaderi Richmond, Alamir Dawes, Dre Davis. That's a lot of production they lose, especially with Richmond going in conference. They bring in Chauncey Jenkins, Zion Harmon. Used to be really highly regarded. Yassine Toomey, I believe is his name.
Yes. 6'10" kid, averaging 11
from Evansville.
Yeah,
they bring
thin,
in
though. He's very thin.
Prince Aligbe from Boston College, Scotty Middleton, South Florida kid.
Yeah, he's a former top 25 recruit.
Gus Yalden as well from Wisconsin, who redshirted his freshman year at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But
did you mention Jenkins?
I did. Jenkins is their best player probably from Old Dominion.
And they added Dial, point guard from Providence, so it's either Harmon or
Garwi Dual.
Yeah, and they also have Aligbe.
Prince Aligbe. Yeah.
He might play center for them because
they're small. They're very small. They're very undersized.
Toomey can't handle the post.
Yeah, I mean this team is not good. Shaheen's gonna have a tough season on his hands for sure.
Yeah.
And I think he's really hoping for a breakout star. Garvey Dual had some buzz going into his Providence season. Didn't really live up to expectations. He punched a guy in the face actually in a game. That probably hurt.
Highlight of the season. Yeah.
So if he can, live up to some of that hype. Scotty Middleton had some top 25 hype coming out of high school. Zion Harmon. But yeah, their hope is low.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But so we'll move on to St. John's, year 2 of the Pitino era. I have them tier 3.
I have them tier 2.
Okay. I think for me this is last year I thought their roster was pretty good and they very much underperformed.
Yeah.
However, they didn't have a player like Kadari Richmond.
No, or Devion Smith.
See, I'm not as big on the Smith. I don't love Smith. This is his fourth stop.
Yep.
Um, he's small.
Very productive at Utah last
I
year.
know he rebounds well, he passes well, but efficiency isn't great. He's small. I just I don't know if he's the number two guy. They do also bring in Aaron Scott and Vincent Iwuchukwu from USC.
Yeah, Aaron Scott's a nice player from North Texas.
Yeah, he is. There's a couple North Texas guys who are on the move that really are gonna make a name for themselves at their new school.
No, they like Scott. He's very versatile. He's not going to be your second leading scorer.
I think that would be R.J. Lewis.
He's returning from injuries this summer.
Many injuries, but that's South Florida kid, Reggie Lewis.
Yep, he's I think he'll have a bounce back ish season.
100%. But they do lose four pretty productive guys in Denise Jenkins, Joel Soriano, Jordan Dingle, and Chris Ledlam. Patino, they got Patino, so that's always a plus. And Richmond, I mean, he's a great player.
They could play, if you remember Patino back in the Louisville days. They were a pressing, aggressive team.
They do have some good defenders on this squad.
This is resembling that sort of roster construction. They're very weak. I mean, Soriano was a very good 5 for them.
Yeah, he was a double type of guy.
They did add a kid, Ruben Prey, who was he's a foreign player, 6'10" freshman, and they're very high on Wilcher, who returning guard. They think he's going to shoot better this year.
Well, Wilcher was a high recruit out of high school, originally committed to UNC, so that tells you all you need to know. But then he didn't have the most productive season. Right. Granted, St. John's had a load of just experienced dudes in front of him.
Yeah, I think I like this roster construction. Other than the 5, they're experienced and obviously have Patino.
Yeah. Moving on to the cream of the crop. Not C, but UConn.
Yeah.
Tier 1 for me.
Yep. No doubt.
Now, with that said, I do not like this roster as much as I have liked the past 2 years' roster. For me, the star is Alex Caravan, as for most people. But I do like the additions of Aiden Mahaney and Liam McNeely in particular. They also added Terrace Reed from Michigan and Ahmad Noel, pretty highly regarded recruit. But they have to replace so much elite production. 4 NBA players, or 4 guys who got drafted. Tristan Newton, Don McClingan, Steph Castle, and Cam Spencer.
Right.
Now, you never doubt Dan Hurley, especially after these 2 past years, but I still have him tier 1, but man, it's going to be a struggle to replace that production.
There's way more questions with this roster
than the last 2
years. Yeah. Samson Johnson's going to have to step into some very large shoes.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
And he's going to have to learn how to not foul.
In stretches, he looked very good.
Yes, but he's also fouled out of almost every game I've played. Hassan Diarra is going to have to make.
Yeah.
I mean, he was their 6th man last year. Was productive off the bench, but he's going to have to really lead this team.
A very poor shooter.
Yeah, you might have Aiden Mahaney at the 1 instead of Diarra and Diarra at the 2, but. And then also Solomon Ball, Jalen Stewart, some of the freshman kids from last year. They're going to have to play a bigger role than they did last year for sure. So there are questions around this team where there really weren't any last year.
Yeah, I think the question is a couple questions. One, can Terrace Reed fill in for Samson Johnson if Johnson gets in any foul trouble? He was I don't want to say productive, but he was a solid player in Michigan. Certainly he's a sort of a double kid, although he hasn't averaged that. One of the other kids they love based on his summer is Isaiah Abraham, 6'7" kid.
Freshman.
Yeah, my best lineup there. I think Diarra will start, unfortunately, but Mahaney, McNeely, Caravan, Reed, and Jones.
I will have to say, the late addition of Liam McNeely really turned my opinion on this team
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
With if he wasn't there, I don't think the Big East would have a tier one.
No. No. I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree.
but at the moment they do. Moving on to the second to last, and looking to bounce back, Villanova.
Yeah.
Where do you have Villanova?
I have them tier 3.
We are in agreement.
Look, they lost guys.
They lost a lot of experience and production.
Yeah, they return, and this was massive for Kyle Neptune, and they return Eric Dixon.
He's the star.
He's the
He was
star.
the star last year. He's going to be the star this year.
He can move to the 4.
His game, his development over the past 4 or 5 years has really impressed me because he used to be a 6'8" bruiser, and then in a game, I think it was the battle. Well, this was when Villanova was actually doing very well last season in Atlantis, and they won at the Atlantis tournament, and they beat UNC. He did like a between the legs step back, and I'm like, from 3, that's Eric Dixon.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's 6'8". I think he might be a 6'7" kid.
Yeah, but he's a big boy.
They added Bouyake from Fresno, was 6'11".
Yeah, that's not the big additions. Let's get to
No,
the big
but
additions.
no, let's go through the roster.
Enoch Boyake. Yeah,
he's a guy who doesn't move the needle, but he averaged 8 and 8 in a
at Fresno.
But Fresno's a mid-major conference.
Yeah, I guess. There's a couple additions that do move the needle.
Well,
Wooga Poplar,
and he was late. Wooga Poplar.
They also got another late addition.
Yeah, Chris Parker from Alabama.
I really like Parker's game. He redshirted the year at Bama, which surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, he was a very high recruit.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter somewhere or X, whatever. They posted his redshirt practice highlights, and oh my gosh,
yeah,
he's a highlight type of player. I really like his game. But Wooga Poplar, of course, from Miami. Jameer Brickus.
Well, they had Brickus and Perkins from Penn, who were both undersized.
Yeah, small backcourt for sure.
Scoring guards. I don't think they'll both play together.
No, they'll probably have Perkins off the bench.
Yeah, I agree with that. Probably Parker off the bench. Poplar, look, early in the season at Miami was being considered a draft lottery pick. Dixon won't be a draft lottery pick, but he's an outstanding college player. Yeah. So if this kid from Fresno can push Dixon to a more comfortable the stretch 4 position, they'll be better.
I do expect them to be better after the last year, but it's up to Kyle Neptune. This is year 3 for him, and he's got some questions to answer if he wants to keep his job.
I also mentioned Jordan Longino.
Returning, yeah.
He's not a needle mover, but he's a very experienced.
He's a rotation player.
He's a very experienced guard. He'll probably start.
Most likely.
Yeah.
And last, but not least, Xavier. I have them tier 2.
Okay, here's where we disagree. I have them tier 3, but I understand I've seen them as high as 2nd or 3rd in the conference. Yeah. Yes, they added some guys. They lost some guys. They have Fremantle returning from redshirt season.
If he can get back to the level he was 2 years ago, then I think they're for sure tier 2. With him, Ryan Conwell from Indiana State, who was really impressive last year, and Marcus Foster from Furman.
Yeah.
And then they also do bring in Dante Maddox Jr., Lassina Traore from Long Beach State, who's placing guys everywhere. John Hewley from Oklahoma, Cam Fletcher from FSU. Those guys will all be in the rotation. They all are experienced.
Yep.
They do have to replace 2 really productive players in Quincy Oliveri and Desmond Claude. But I think things are looking up for the Musketeers.
Well, I think you hit on it. Desmond Claude. The thing about Claude is he is a mini Cam Thomas. Scores in similar ways to Thomas. He's a bucket getter. He was the guy when they needed a bucket. They went to. They didn't have a good season. Don't get me wrong. Sean Miller.
They bring in some bucket getters though.
Yeah, they bring in some bucket getters. I like McKnight at the point. He knows what he's doing. The key is Fremantle. Is he healthy? He also played with, and I'm drawing a blank. He played with another.
Jack Nungi.
Played with Nungi, so he was more of a complementary
auxiliary guy.
And I mean, he had 15-9. He was very successful.
Nungi was
the guy.
A lot of attention there.
I think Traore is a nice fit at the 4, and obviously Conwell really played well at Indiana State. They have pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not far off. You have them second, I have them third.
Yeah.
But there's a fit, and also who's going to be that alpha dog.
I do, yeah. I've had 3 listed with Foster, Conwell, and Fremantle. But I mean, if you can have a 3-headed monster at the guard, the wing, center. But I think the Musketeers will be solid.
Yeah, obviously they're in my top half. I think I had 5 locks, if you will, and then
I had 4, and I only have 1 tier 1, which speaks to how weak this Big East is.
Yeah, I also had 1 tier 1. I had tier 1A.
Well, they're going in tier 1 for the viewers, for the visual viewers. So we'll see our tier lists up here.
But yeah, this is not a legendary Big East conference.
Big East.
I do agree. UConn is not the strongest of natty contenders we've profiled. They are the cream of this crop. And there are some teams that, if things fall for them,
the right places, dominoes.
Xavier, St. John's, I'm not including Villanova in there. But I think those 2 teams, Xavier and St. John's, could make a big leap if things fall for them.
Yeah. But so that is our Big East preview and tier list. You disagree with us, if you're a fan of some of these teams, let us know in the comments down below. If not, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next week for our next conference preview in this series. Peace.